start to study the topic of sense organs. Where are these actually? Where are they? Who else is absent? We will talk about the visual apparatus and about the hearing organ. But also you know that you should remember skin, organ of taste and smell. It's for your own education. Yes, it's very simple, it's brief, but the visual and hearing will be described and we are talking about it in details. So the visual apparatus includes the eyeball and everything that is located in socket, in orbit. To start with eyeball. Eyeball consists of 3 layers and internal structures. The superficial layer is called fibrous layer. The next is the vascular layer, and the last is retina or internal layer. The external layer is fibrous layer that consists of 2 parts. The anterior part is cornea, the posterior part, it's much bigger, is sclera. Sclera consists of plenty of collagen fibers. It's not transparent, and the main role of sclera is to provide the protectiveness, to protect eyeball, and also to be the place where the extraocular muscles are attached. The cornea is transparent. The transparency of cornea depends on the certain amount of water in it, also certain order of the collagen fibers in it, and of course the absence of vessels. There are no vessels in cornea. It's a vascular structure. You can ask, what about nutrition? The nutrients are taken from the intermediate zone between sclera and cornea. This zone is called limbus of sclera, and also from the aqueous humor fluid that is located in the chambers of eyeball, and also from the lacrimal film, from tears. But the vessels are absent. It's the most sensitive structure of the human body, and the origin of the sensory innervation is trigeminal nerve. It's the most sensory. Also, it's very well regenerative activity from the anterior epithelium of cornea. It's regenerated after 3 days completely, even if it's removed. The epithelium in the anterior part is very well regenerative. The next is the vascular layer. The vascular layer consists of 3 parts: iris, the next is ciliary body, and the last is choroid. Iris is frontally located plate with the opening in it. This opening is called pupil, and the diameter of pupil is regulated by 2 muscles inside. One is sphincter pupil muscle, the second is dilator pupil, and therefore the role of iris is diaphragm to regulate the amount of light that gets retina. It has anterior, posterior surface, it has ciliary border, the pupillary border, and the color of iris depends on the number of pigment in it, and also depends on the transparency of the anterior layers through which this pigment could be observed. The ciliary body is divided into several parts. The ciliary crown, it's called corona ciliaris. It has a lot of processes. The role of these processes is to form the filtration of the aqueous humor fluid. Yes. It's like heart of eyeball. The second is the orbiculus ciliaris. It's orbicular part or plane part that contacts with the next portion of the vascular layer that is called choroid. There are 2 functions of the ciliary body. The first is to produce the humor aquosus that enters the posterior chamber, then through the pupillary opening to the anterior chamber, and in this chamber there is the iridocorneal angle In the apex of this angle, there is a venous sinus, Schlem's canal it's called, and through the wall of this canal, the aqueous humor will be drained to the episcleral veins. When this Schlem's canal is closed, the fluid is produced constantly, the intraocular pressure will be increased, compression of the fibers of nerve, and as a result, the person will be blind. In the cases of the high intraocular pressure, the disease is called glaucoma. The second function is accommodation. Accommodation is the adjustment to observe objects located distantly or near the eyeball. There are muscles inside which form the ciliary muscle, and these muscles are formed by three different types of fibers. The longitudinal or meridional fibers along the meridians, longitudinally located. There are also secularly located fibers and radial fibers. And when we look forward to see what is located nearby, the longitudinal parts of the ciliary muscle are contracted. Ciliary processes are related with lens located inside. The capsule of lens will be relaxed and the volume of lens will be increased. The refractive power of lens is increased too. So we accommodate to observe the objects which are near the eyeball. If it's distantly located object, the radial fibers of this muscle are contracted, and the iris together with the ciliary body and choroid will be directed downwards. The tone of the capsule of lens is increased and the lens started to be flattened. The refractive power of lens will be decreased. So we accommodate to see the distantly located objects. So two functions of ciliary body. The first is to produce humor aquosus. The second is to form accommodation and to take part in the accommodation. The next is choroid. Choroid is the last portion of the vascular layer. It consists of plenty of the short posterior ciliary vessels, and the main role of choroid is provide nutrition of the external 5 layers of 10 layers of retina. So external parts of retina are supplied by choroid. It's like energetic base for it. The last is retina, internal layer. Retina also can be classified into several portions. The anterior parts of retina are blind. They are called pars seca. Blind part of retina composes of several layers of epithelium on the internal surface of iris and internal surface of the ciliary body. So it's like iridal and ciliary parts. But the biggest portion of retina is the optic part that consists of 10 layers, and among these layers there are the most important layers, which are neurons of the visual nervous pathway. The first of them are the bodies of cones and rods, photoreceptors. Photoreceptors, which are responsible for color vision and for central vision, are called cones. Photoreceptors responsible for peripheral vision and dim vision are rods. When we observe the ocular fundus, we can see it with the special devices, ophthalmoscopes. We can find two important spots on the ocular fundus. The first is called optic disc, or blind spot, the place where the axons of optic nerve exit the eyeball. It's blind because there are no photoreceptors at all. There are no cones, no rods, nothing here. Optic nerve is located. And the second is called the yellow spot, or macula lutea, with the central fovea. It's concentration of the highest amount of the cones, and each cone is related with the bipolar neurocyte as well as with the ganglionar cell. So this precise structure of the central fovea provides the highest central vision. Photoreceptors are in retina, then the bipolar neurocyte, they form the second neuron of the nervous visual pathway, and there are also ganglionar cells. The axons of these ganglionar cells form the optic nerve itself. And it doesn't matter what is the type of your future specialty. You could be a therapist, neurologist, yes, neurosurgeon. So every time you will direct your patients for the examination of ocular fundus by ophthalmologist, and it's some kind card of the health of the individuals, because we can suggest different disorders only with the experience of the observation of the ocular fundus. The vessels, you see, optic disc, it's like the examination of the whole body, because we can see it without some invasions inside. We can suggest these diseases. The next is internal structure, internal nuclei of the eyeball. So we talked about the layers, yes, now we are talking about the internal structures. As we said before, there is lens inside. A lens is also a vascular structure, therefore together with cornea it reflects light. But the power, reflective power of cornea is a lot, approximately 45 dioptries, whilst the lens is just 18, 20 dioptries, and the cornea is stable by its reflective power, whilst the lens is flexible. It changes during accommodation. It doesn't have vessels, therefore we don't have inflammation, never, but it could be opacity, cataract can be developed inside. So it reflects light. It has a little bit yellow color, therefore it's like filter for light. And what is important, it's unique structure because of its growth. What does it mean? The growth is inside the lens. The lens is covered by capsule, anterior and posterior part of capsule, and the internal layer of this capsule has a lot of epithelial cells. These epithelial cells near the equator of lens started to be fibers, and these fibers are directed to the central part, to the nucleus, and with the aging processes, the nucleus started to be harder, so the elasticity of lens is decreased, whilst the volume of this part is not increased. So the elasticity will be less developed with age because of the hard nucleus inside, whilst the accommodative power will be decreased together with this density, but the volume is not increased, so the transparency is preserved. So the accommodative power, the ability to accommodate is decreased with age, and after 40-45 years old, the accommodation is very low, therefore a person feels that it's not comfortable to read, yes, to observe everything that is nearby. Therefore, the glasses for short distance could be prescribed. Lens. Chambers. Chambers of eyeball, anterior chamber and posterior chamber, they are filled with the aqueous humor, humor aquosus. What is it? There is a fluid that is similar to plasma of blood. It's result the filtration from the processes of the ciliary body. It directed to the posterior chamber. It's limited by iris, lens, and through pupil it's directed to the anterior chamber, that is limited by cornea, iris, and the iridocorneal angle, as we mentioned before, is a place where the Schlemm's canal is formed. And Schlemm's canal takes this fluid to drain it to the venous vessels of orbit. One more part of the refractive power is the vitreous body. You see this big space is occupied with the vitreous body. It's similar to gel. It's like gel, consists of different proteins, and in normal it's transparent too. But the main function of it, the refractive power is a little bit developed, just 3% of the total refractive volume of the eyeball. But the main function is, of course, to form, to create the shape, the form of the eyeball. Because without vitreous body, the eyeball will be shapeless. So just 3 layers and no shape in it. So this is vitreous body. The vitreous body is also important to fix the layers, and without it the retina could be detached, and in this case the transparency of retina will be damaged and the person can be blind too. So we described the eyeball. Now we should say about the accessory apparatus of eye. And the start is the muscles, the extraocular muscles located in orbit, and we have several of them. The first is the group of the straight muscles, superior rectus muscle, inferior rectus muscle. We have also the medial rectus and lateral rectus muscles. They are originated from the optic canal, directed forward, attached to sclera in front of equator. These muscles push eyeball to the side corresponding with the name of muscle. Superior rectus, superiorly, inferior rectus, inferiorly, lateral for abduction, lateral movements, and the medial for adduction, medial movements. There are also 2 oblique muscles. The first is superior oblique muscle. It starts from the optic canal, goes forward, attached to trochlea, its inferior wall of orbit, inferior surface of the superior wall of orbit. Then it changes the direction and attached to sclera behind the equator. Therefore, this muscle rotates eyeball laterally and downwards, like this, rotates it. The inferior oblique muscle starts from the medial and inferior wall of orbit, directed to the eyeball and attached to eyeball again behind the equator. Therefore, it rotates eyeball upwards and laterally. There is also one more muscle. We should mention this muscle. It occupies the inferior orbital fissure. It's called orbitalis muscle. Smooth muscle. The role of this muscle is to influence the location of eyeball in orbit. Increased tone, protruded eyeball, decreased creates anophthalmos. And also the role to influence the drainage of venous blood from orbit, because there are a lot of veins which pass the orbitalis muscle. Yes. Don't forget about levator palpebrae superioris muscle. It's inside the eyelids, and orbicular oculi muscle, because it's a part of the facial muscles. And don't forget about intraocular muscles, which are ciliary muscle and the muscles of iris. What is the function of all these muscles in general? In general, they are important for the binocular vision. Yes, binocular vision, because if the person has squint or strabismus, the eyeball is directed to the inappropriate side, and the axis, optic axis, will not get this part, central fovea. There is no high visual acuity in this case, in the case of strabismus. So binocular vision is important function of all these muscles. Their balanced tone is important for binocular vision. What else is included in the accessory apparatus? Eyelids, as we said before, upper and lower eyelids. The upper eyelid, it has muscle to elevate it, whilst the lower eyelid doesn't have. And the layers of eyelids are skin. Then beneath skin we have the muscular plate, as we said, and the next is so-called cartilage. In reality, there is no cartilage. It's called cartilage, it's formal name, but it's created by the connective tissue. And the last is conjunctiva. Conjunctiva is similar to the mucous membrane. It covers the internal surface of eyelids. It's conjunctiva of eyelids. Then it's surface of eyeball covered with it till the zone of limbus. It's conjunctiva called the bulbar conjunctiva, covers the bulbus oculi. And between them there is the fornix, the conjunctiva of fornix, between the conjunctiva of eyelids and conjunctiva of eye. Here is it, there is the conjunctiva of fornix. Then we have also one more point to discuss about the accessory apparatus is the lacrimal apparatus. There are structures to produce tears, lacrimal film, yes, and structures to drain it. Yes. So where is produced? So to be true, the structure of the lacrimal film is complicated. So it's not just water, yes, because yes, there is some part of water. We need to remove the foreign bodies on the from the surface of eyeball. We need to provide the moisturizing the surface of eyeball. It's important to have water inside the lacrimal film. And the water part of the lacrimal film is produced by lacrimal glands. You see, this one is the main lacrimal gland. But this gland is activated only as the reflectory organ. It means if the foreign body here or some drugs are evaporated, so formaldehyde, for example, or there is some stress, so it's like reflectory. The second portion of the lacrimal gland is located in conjunctiva, mainly in the conjunctiva of the inferior part of it, and there are plenty of them. They are not visible without special devices. These accessory lacrimal glands, they are activated constantly. The surface of this layer, water layer, should be covered with lipids to avoid the evaporation, to be the lubricant when the eyelids are directed downwards and upwards. And these lipids are produced by the tarsial glands located inside the eyelids. The one more layer of the lacrimal film is proteins, mucin layer, that is produced by the cells of cornea and conjunctiva. What is the direction to outflow the tears? The first is so-called the conjunctival cavity, the lacrimal rivus, the place located between inferior eyelid and the surface of eyeball. Then the tears are directed to the medial part, where the lacrimal lake is located. Inside the lacrimal lake there are lacrimal points, puncta lacrimalis they are called. From them the lacrimal canaliculi, superior and inferior, are originated. They are opened into the lacrimal sac, its superior portion of the nasal lacrimal duct that is directed to inferior nasal meatus in the nasal cavity. We understand when the nasal cavity is with inflammation, so rhinitis, for example, yes, and the nasal lacrimal duct is blocked. In this case, tears will not go to this appropriate direction. And on the opposite side, when we have conjunctivitis, inflammation of conjunctiva, again, there is some secretions from nose too, because they are related with each other, conjunctival cavity and nasal cavity. This one. For the accessory apparatus of eyeball, we should mention also eyebrows, lashes, and there is the adipose body. It's adipose fat tissue behind the posterior pole of eyeball. And there is also Tenon's capsule. Tenon's capsule is important capsule to protect eyeball. It has external and internal layers. External is above, internal is below the extraocular muscles. They form the so-called sheath for them to be attached to the surface of the eyeball, Tenon's capsule. Nervous visual pathway. The light gets the refractive environment of eyeball, and then they get the photoreceptors located in retina. There are, as we said before, 3 neurons in retina. The first of them are the bodies of cones and rods. The second are the bipolar neurocytes, and the third are the ganglionar cells. The fibers, axons of the ganglionar cells form optic nerve. Optic nerve is divided into several parts. The intrascleral part, here it's called also intraocular part. It's tiny part, approximately 3 millimeters, when it penetrates sclera, cribriform part of sclera. Then we have one more part, it's intraorbital part. It's a long part, and after it the intracanalicular part is located when the optic nerve passes optic canal. The last part is intracranial part before optic chiasm. In optic chiasm, the fibers of right and left optic nerves form crossovering, and these fibers are decussated to form optic chiasm. After optic chiasm, optic tract is created. Optic tract has information from the both eyeballs, right and left. Optic tract is terminated in the subcortical visual centers, which are known for us already, yes? They are superior colliculi of midbrain, we know it, pulvinar of thalamus, and lateral geniculate bodies, it's diencephalon. The midbrain centers are reflectory centers, so-called start reflex, result of the sudden flash. From the pulvinar and the lateral geniculate bodies, the impulses passes the radiation, optic radiation, to the central zone for the cortical analyzer located aside the calcarine sulcus. There is a cortical center of the visual analyzer, occipital lobe here. So it's a very general description of the visual apparatus. You see, it's a lot of also information. So the eyeballs are provided for us. The eyeballs are not human, of course. So you see the density is increased because of formaldehyde, therefore it's not so elastic. But we can see what? We can see cornea here, sclera, white color, yes, limbus zone between them. The part of conjunctiva was preserved here, this one, and the other portions should be observed after dissection of eyeball. If you want, you can dissect it. You are welcome to do it. So there are different. Yes, so you can cut by different ways. You can cut with the place as equator, yes, or you can do it like this. It's up to you. But be careful, because vitreous body is replaced by water, and therefore when you do it, yes, be careful, because there it could be splashes of water. Okay, carefully, because the water is inside instead of the ciliary. Yes, you see. Be careful, yes.
भाई मछली की भी तो ऐसे निकलती.
Should be scissors, probably. It's better.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, the elasticity is not appropriate. Yes, it's not appropriate. Yes. Be careful with your fingers. What?
It's so like
Yes.
अंदर की उसकी एक ले चलो पैक करा के खा लो स्लो इशू से पूछ लियो और इसको कपड़ा पोंछने के लिए चाहिए
Pigment of the